Cosmic here, welcome back to another Chaos Zero Nightmare video, and today I'm going to give my honest thoughts overall on the 1.0 version of Chaos Zero Nightmare because, well, tomorrow the first big update reveal is going to happen, and well, what can we expect? So I thought it was really important just to get down my initial impressions of the game, kind of where we are so far, how much we've been grinding, and why I think this is one of the best gachas that we've had in a significantly long time, and why I think it's in such a good position going forward as long as they fix a few things. So without further ado, let's dive in and just talk about the experience so far. But before I get into that, I think there are some, qualifiers that we do have to add here. So this is just more to showcase it that, yes, through the Basin, I am at 26 out of 30 currently. Full disclaimer, I can do the Haru in like 4 turns with having the advantage, but my Kayron is just not geared up for the phase 2 of this, and I just don't have Mei Lin. So unfortunately, I am a little bit gated in this one. We have 3 days left, so I do have to go back and actually try a little bit harder. But kind of the more important thing to me and kind of where I want to really speak to this is if we go into the Zero system, I have had this maxed out for a while. We're actually well over at this point for the overall orbs that we farmed, and this is really where the game shines for me. So we're going to come back to this, but this is a very long-winded way to say that I have put in the hours into this game, and I just think that it is that good. But first and foremost, we do need to start with the story. And, well, maybe not too much with this because, as you may know, that the entire story is going to be rewritten, chapters 1 through 5. And, well, I don't want to spoil it too much because I'm kind of hoping that this is where it's going to lean back in a little bit in terms of the rewrite. But the epilogue was actually just the most frustrating thing in the world because on one hand, it just didn't make sense and it didn't fit with where the overall story was, but it also had the first loop, the chaos loop part they keep going back to and having the captain actually use their powers. It's like, this is so cool. It feels like there could be a lot more to this, but ultimately it did fall a little bit flat. Now I know from a bigger picture, the vast majority of people are going to say, we're playing a gacha. Who cares about the story, right? I get that to a degree. However, I do think that there should still be some level of world building and some amount of engagement or care that we should have for the story overall. And I think this is really amplified by the fact that we know that they have new writers, and we know that the new writers worked on the Trauma Code episodes, which, by the way, were amazing. And I think it had just such a phenomenal writing and story arc and development and music and just everything. It was a night and day difference between what we got in the overall chapters 1 through 5 and where Trauma Code is at. So this is kind of the other reason why I want to do this video right before the seasonal update, or try to get it out before the seasonal update, because this is what is going to sell me on future content. I've been very transparent about this up front, that for me personally, and again, everyone's going to have their own opinions, their own breakers and deals, what have you. For me, what is really going to make or break this game comes down to how they tackle the seasonal updates and how good they are. Now, I do fully expect that the first season is going to be them trying to figure things out. The first couple banners might not land perfectly. The bosses might not be super engaging. But at least if we can put something together that is different than just the MiHoYo Basin, which I'm going to go complain about that next, style that is our main crystal farm, I think it'll be very good for the game. Again, unfortunately, a lot of this might be heavily negative, I will say up front, to just, again, being transparent with my thoughts and where I'm at, but I do see a lot of promise in the game overall. So, again, focusing more on just the story, the writing, and where the creative side of it is right now, I do actually have a lot of hope going into Season 1, strictly because of how good the Trauma Code was. So, if you haven't gone through this, other than just for the sake of getting the crystals and making sure getting the unlock, and by the way, it ends in 3 days, so please make sure you do, take the time, go through this. I think this is definitely a very positive sign about where things are at, even if the main story is, well, 1, getting scrapped, and then 2 is just not great to begin with, right? We were promised a much darker story up front, and it just kind of fell a bit short in that regard. So I'm really hoping that they can fix this up quite a bit. Now, outside of story, I think there is a point to talk about the overall artwork or the overall combatant designs. And I gotta say, I think they did a really great job with this. Overall, I've been very happy with the overall preview of the characters we've gotten, the partners that are in the game so far. And I won't talk about leaks ever on this channel, but I will, at least at a high level, say if you've seen the leaks, I think there's a lot to be excited about from an overall design perspective. That the creative direction that they have is very, very strong. And we've also seen, maybe more importantly, we have seen what they've done for Epic 7, and that also gives me a lot of hope in terms of what type of direction that we can expect. But overall, from the animations that we have, especially as we're going through the battles, the death scenes that we get in Nightmare, I think there's actually a lot of really cool stuff that they're doing here, and I really hope we get to see that expanded out more in the future, and also, just more male characters in general. I know a lot of people, may not be the biggest fan of the obvious fan service degrees that they have, or like Narha, she's on the main website. We can definitely talk to her design as well, which certain accents are featured, right? But what's really cool about Narha in particular is that we do have like the manta rays that kind of balance it out. And there's some really great artwork that I'm hoping that we can see more of the card design come together, that would hopefully make her ultimate really cool once we finally get the real pieces, So for me, overall, I think that the art is definitely a banger. I think when we think about art and when we think about, enemy design, that's going to be a big part as well. I forgot I had one of these in progress that I have to go finish. But when we think about the chaos mode overall, the bosses and enemy designs and all that stuff is really, really great. And I think that at least a good start. And this, again, brings me back to a seasonal point, is that I really do hope we see more of the chaos exploration. And we do know that we are going to be getting a new planet or some type of new chaos-ish mode with the seasonal content. My biggest thing there is that I hope we get to see new enemy types as well. And they don't just, rehash the mutants / robots / the bugs, right? Give us something new. Obviously, there is going to be an element advantage of whatever the banner character is. I think we can all accept and agree to that. But I hope that we're going to get a little bit more variety in terms of the designs that we're going to see. And of course, if nothing else, the boss designs, I think, are really going to carry a lot of that weight. Now, the one thing I do want to talk about, again, from an overall design perspective that I am not a fan of, is the Hyper Basin. So obviously, this is something that they have just straight copied from MiHoYo, right? We have the performance criteria, clear within 12 turns, what have you. This game is so great on one hand because it has the chaos system. And when I talk about 100 hours, the fact that you don't have to spend stamina and you can go into chaos and just continuously progress and work towards a character to try to find that one super awesome save data. And honestly, the best example I have of this is my Haru save data, where I finally found this anchor pointer and also got to copy it. Now, the downside I will say here, of course, immediately, again, pro, con, is that based on the most recent update, it sounds like this save data will get nerfed, because after the patch dropped, you can see this has a save date of the 3rd. I have not been able to recreate something close to this, unfortunately. So we do have to wait and see where the transparency is going to be on the save data. We do know that the devs are already working on this and prioritizing it and what have you. But if they don't land this in a spot where it is extremely transparent in terms of, if we can only do two card removals per deck, or, per combatant, I guess I should say, for those that are not on the TCG side, right? If we can only do 2 removals per combatant, we can only have 2 divines, right, per combatant, and what have you, right? If that's going to be like the limitation, sure. Obviously, it's going to feel bad, but there has to be some balancing element to the game as well, which, at least if they're being transparent, I can work against those limitations, right? As it exists today for the save data system, it is I'm going to try to build a deck as perfect as possible, and I may or may not get to keep that out at the end of the run, which is a extremely frustrating experience. One of the best examples I have of this, to go into our combatants really quick, right, is a lot of people right now will be like, oh my God, look at this, and we'll just use these 2 comparisons. I wish the numbers were inflated more, but a lot of people will be like, oh my God, look at this 90K save that I got. And it's like a 15 card deck. And you're like, oh my God, this is such a good deck. I have such a high save number. Clearly the game is telling me that that's a good thing, right? Like, I always want to have the highest TB number possible. You couldn't be more wrong if your life depended on it, right? Between these 2 save datas, which, again, the most obvious thing is just going to be the card size, and obviously some of the epiphanies we could talk about in more detail. But this 6 card save data is 3x, 4x, 5x, 6x. Like, not even in the same ballpark of power level as this one, and it has a lower TB threshold. And I really want to stress that point for players, because maybe I've just been seeing too many comments, maybe too many people are just stuck on, posting these big things to Reddit. But I am losing my mind at people who are stuck on big number equals good, when you literally could not be more wrong just from a overall power level and, efficiency standpoint. You have to remember that this is a deck building game. So being able to consistently execute on the game plan of whoever your main damage dealer is the single most important aspect of this game, period. Nothing else matters, as long as, to now go back to our pain point, nothing else matters as long as the Hyper Basin is going to take the primary focus of this game. And when we have characters like Maribel, like Magna, like Calliope, and Calliope's a disclaimer that I'll talk about in a future video, all these characters want to have great build-up times. Or in my favorite example of Kayron, who I do have semi-reasonably invested, right? Like if we go to his character kit really quick, like I have good, well, they're taking off now, but like I have a good artifact set because it's on Tressa right now. I have a good artifact set, right? If we go to his potentials, because again, I use this exact set on Kayron. If we go to his potentials, I am pretty heavily invested in the one that matters to the most to him, because this is going to amp up his black hole damage. And this character is so bad at this content because it is a build-up style of character. And while Haru is the exact same, qualifying statement, as Haru is a build-up character with her anchor shot. One, you can build her two different ways if you ultimately want to. But two, she has Anchor Pointer, which allows her to easily access that build-up card and get to that payoff. Kayron, unfortunately, unless you have him at E3 or you have his partner, it is going to feel extremely bad to play in this environment, even if he has the Void buff. Like, that is still a big disclaimer that I have to add. Even if the second one was Void, right? Rin would be better. Any future banner character that we would get that is like a Void Striker is immediately going to feel better than Kayron, which is just such a disappointing factor for me, that this mode itself needs to be retuned, rebalanced, what have you. Now, again, eventually we're going to get to a point where everyone has level 60 characters. You can come in here with like Owen and clear this, and it doesn't matter, right? Like a maxed out Owen, or a Owen that's as invested, I should say, as my Haru, should have no problem clearing the highest Basin difficulty currently in the game. Sure, that is fine to a point. However, it is extremely limiting what players can access or have the deck building around with this in mind, where you only have 6 turns per team, on average, of course, to clear this content. So one of the things that I really hope to see, to bring this all back to the seasonal content, is that we really need to see those seasonal bosses not have this same clear in 12 turns or you're not going to get the max amount of points, right? Make it where it is just, if you can survive the boss, right? I think Judas is a good example of this as well. No matter how high the difficulty is, or that you ramp up, as long as you clear it, you will get X amount of rewards, right? Let players be able to build their characters however they want, because right now, as it exists, and Calliope is a great example, for Chaos, you have to build defensive, you have to build sustain, and you're focused on your characters in a very specific way. Those builds do not work in the Basin of Hyperspace, and if they also then don't work for these seasonal bosses that are coming up, it is going to feel absolutely terrible for players to try to go through that chaos, min-max their save data, while they can barely clear it because they have to do the all-in DPS build that Calliope has access to instead of her more tanky strategy. So again, a long-winded way to say I really hope that they reevaluate or fix what type of currency that we're going to be getting in the future, because this does feel a little bit limiting. Now, the one thing I do want to say, and kind of the positive aspect of it, right? If we go back to Chaos and we go back to the Zero system, and I can't possibly say enough positive things about this system. Before I do that, I will say my one negative thing. Oh my God. Super Creative and Smilegate, again, whoever's deciding the currency value here, You gotta nerf this, y'all. I get that at some point we'll have enough Chaos Orbs to loop this and it doesn't matter. But 90,000 credits, which is almost 60 full stamina worth on difficulty 10 for, or I should say, excuse me, difficulty 6 for the farming stages, which we're gonna get to next, is offensively bad. That is like the one pain point that I will have. That said, this mode absolutely slaps. This is the thing that's gonna keep me coming back time and time again for any new character that we get. Going through Chaos, whether you're doing the planet that has their advantage or not, is just such a fun experience. Getting to learn the different epiphanies, learning how different characters can come together with new epiphanies, right? Like, the biggest aha moment for me was with Kayron and having his multi-hit and realizing just how insanely busted it is with Ray. That is such a rewarding and cool player experience that is only possible by the Zero system and by going through each of the different Chaos modes, that as long as they keep that as a focus of this game, I truly believe that they're going to have an absolute banger of a game on their hands. Again, assuming we make the very small adjustments here when it comes to the codex and making sure that it doesn't cost the 90,000 for this. So please, oh my God, nerf this cost. Like, I think it's like 50K even at the start, 45K. That's too much. Like, look, I get it. Down the road, we're going to have credits out the wazoo and everything will be, you know, not a big deal. Or now that we're later on the Zero system, like, I don't need any more upgrades at this point, right? Like, mine's already maxed out. We can go to our upgrading tab. All this is done, right? Sure, I have nothing else to spend on the Zero system, but I have played the game a lot to get to this point, which, pro tip, if you find yourself stuck at this point, do not do nightmare mode for any of your runs. Focus on all of it being normal, because that way, even if you fail, you are still getting some amount of orbs and to upgrade and to get the more stats. Whereas if you were to do this on nightmare, you have to either leave at a certain point to get the currency, or you have to clear the final boss to get the currency. And there are going to be some runs where you just died RNG, and that's a super bad feeling, where it's like, you get Gloomy Prime right at the end, and you just spent an hour doing this run, and you're like, all right, man, I guess I'm cooked. And that's just how it is, right? So I very strongly recommend everybody to just focus on doing normal, build up your Chaos Zero system, rather. Make sure you're getting the buffs, because I realize it might not seem that impressive. Increase attack by 9 and, you know, increase defense by 3, and then health by 12. This does stack up every tier. And also keep in mind that flat stats are actually very, very good in this game for how the actual equipment and gearing and all that stuff works. So the fact that you get all these flat stats, you will find out that difficulty 10 is super easy. Like, once you max this out, and as long as you have elemental advantage, difficulty 10 is nothing. Like, this is just a walk in the park at this point. As long as your characters are like medium investment and you have this maxed out, you'll steamroll this content, no problem. Obviously, if you don't know which epiphanies to choose, or if you're uncertain about like which gear to pick, or if you didn't invest in your memory fragments enough, yeah, that's gonna feel a little bit bad. But as someone who's gone through this now with a couple different characters and has gone through the process of building them up, making sure I have the right gear on them, difficulty 10 is kind of whatever. It's really easy, but it's still fun to go through and making sure that I'm trying out those various characters. And again, getting rewarded for spending the time of going through this and trying to chase the perfect save data. So again, while it is fundamentally flawed right now, and we are aware of the devs saying that they're going to be working on it, I very much look forward to the first update and hopefully getting a bit more transparency on how we can make better save data, because right now it is a little bit of a crapshoot, it feels like, to finally level up our units and get the right decks and all that stuff so that we can then go do the harder content. So that brings me kind of the last major theme that I want to talk about is just the farming issue, right? Every positive thing that I've just said about the Zero system and Chaos in general, right? Getting to have a mode where we don't have to care about stamina. We can just spend as many hours as we want chasing that perfect save data. Like, and again, my Haru being the prime example of, oh my God, she is now a god tier unit because I got this save data. All of this is held back by just how painful the stamina gate is. And I want to be very clear about something up front, right? I know a lot of people are frustrated with the early limitations of a gacha. The game just launched. I can't instantly max all my guys to 60. what have you. Some of that, look, you signed up to play a gacha. You have to accept that, like, disclaimer up front. It's going to suck for a little while if you're trying to max out everybody to 60, right? You signed up for this. You're playing a gacha. It is what it is. However, what I will not defend is when we think about where the different tiers of potential farming are, right? You'll notice that potentials only go up to 6. We'll go back to growth. This only goes up to 6. And then when we get to memory fragments, these go up to 10. I am hoping with every fiber in my body, this is just a silly oversight that happened, but nothing pisses me off more right now than trying to do a difficulty 6 run of credits and only getting 96,000 credits when it costs 1.2 million credits to go from 50 promotion to then level 60 with upgrading the mats. It breaks my mind. Like, it is so offensively bad of how much stamina that we have to waste, again, because we don't have difficulty 10. Super creative. I swear to God, of all the above, please update this. Like, this is something, again, I get we have to spend stamina. I get that it's going to be a time gate, but you gotta fix this, man. This is a slap in the face to all players once you realize just how ungodly bad this is, which is only further compounded by the fact of we don't have a seasonal event going on that is giving us a bunch of rewards, right? As we're leveling up, we have been going through the growth guide mission. We've been getting a shit ton of resources. And to be fair, again, Super Creative's, credit, they gave us exactly enough resources to get 6 characters to 50, which is all you need to clear the content in the game currently. However, if at any point that you went off the guided path from that route that Super Creative very clearly lined out for us, you're immediately going to be pained by the fact that upgrading characters costs way too much in this game. And again, for me, as someone who's trying to create content, right, I do have a lot of 50s, but now I am stuck where I am just never going to touch this Rinoa, and she is always just going to rot in my box at level 1 until we get more resources. I don't even have some of my support characters upgraded to 40, which, by the way, if you've missed the stream, if you've missed out, what have you, I very strongly recommend getting your supports to 40, getting your DPS to 50, and making a hard stop at that point, I guess, and partners of their respective classes, right, to 50 and 40 respectively. Hard stopping at that point until you are absolutely sure that you want to invest that character further. As you can see here, I did get Haru to 60. How do I feel about it? Honestly, really feels like a waste from making that jump from 50 to 60. A lot better investment would have been made into min-maxing her memory fragments here and doing more of her potentials, which I'm pretty far in, all things considered. But that 50 to 60 upgrade for how much it cost, absolutely not worth it. I should have just picked another character to 40. All right, 2 characters, I think, to 40 for how the math breaks out. But, I just didn't know at the time, and I wanted to see how expensive it was ultimately going to be, and that's why I finally got Magna to 40. But again, this stuff adds up. 40 to 50 is a massive jump, and when we're already so poor on credits, like, it just does not feel good. So I do think this is another area that, to Super Creative's, credit, hopefully the first season, when we get like the seasonal shop and all that stuff, will alleviate a lot of this stress. But at least for right now, it does feel extremely bad. Again, as someone who is stamina refreshing every single day, I am committed to this to try to get up more characters so I can build them up. I've been stamina refreshing every single day. And look, at this point, unless the seasonal rewards are just like mind-blowingly good, I am probably stuck stamina refreshing every single day until 60 just so I can make content. And again, content creator problem, I get it. But I think that I want to stress, again, how bad this feels just because we have difficulty 6. as a main limitation for, how many units we can get, how many potentials that we can get when they require just so ungodly much. So I do think this will be better in the future for when we get season 1, but I at least wanted to get my thoughts together as kind of a first impressions look of where the game is at. And hopefully with season 1, which we'll do another video in terms of a recap on, did it solve my issues? Are we there? Is the game doomed? Whatever it might be, right? We'll figure that all out together and do another follow-up once the information is live. But I thought it was still important to do a Chaos Zero Nightmare 1.0, right? Where's our roster? How do we feel about it right now? And again, the 10-second summary at the end. Chaos Zero system, absolutely amazing. It is definitely the #1 reason to keep playing this game because it is just so insanely rewarding to finally get that so amazing save data that when you get to use it in the save data content, like the weekly bosses, my God, my E0 Haru feels like an entirely new character now just because I got this save data. But this game is held back by literally everything else that I've mentioned that I hope Super Creative can ultimately find a good balance to smooth this out, or I do think that the game will suffer going into Season 1 content, which otherwise should be an absolute banger. So, yes, story improvements to be expected, farming improvements hopefully is going to get alleviated by Season 1. And I know I didn't even talk about like the pull economy, but we do know that the devs mentioned that they will make it better for people, if needed. But I know a lot of people will be going to the 300 mark here soon with all the free pulls that we've been getting, and obviously even more with the events that are going to be going out for Season 1. So I will be doing another video talking about the 300 selector and what I think are the 3 key picks. So look forward to that video soon. But I do hope that Season 1 will be a good light for this game, which otherwise had a pretty rocky start. But God, they cooked so well with the Chaos data loop and getting saved data that I really am overall positive on the outlook of this game, even if I was a bit critical for this video. So let me know your thoughts below. How have you been enjoying Chaos Zero Nightmare so far? What level are you at as you've been going through the experience overall? Again, let me know in the comments below and see what your thoughts are, especially for those who are maybe free to play, because again, I've been stamina swiping, I should say, every single day just to try to get my other roster characters up to hopefully make some more content. But with that, that's all for today's video. Again, I really want to hurry up and get something out before the big update tomorrow, and we'll kind of do another just recap of where things are at and how I think the game is going to be looking going forward. But with that, my friends, look forward to the next Chaos Zero Nightmare video coming soon. Make sure to like and subscribe until then. But until our next video or stream, I'll see you next time. Be safe, stay hydrated, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.